Ladies and gentlemen, and this is How Vodka Ruined Russia by the channel Kraut. Yes, another Kraut video. I saw video about Russia and its system throughout the years, how it worked. It was a great origin video kind of type of thing, right? Which was kind of interesting. It was about authoritarianism, but that's not the only point. It showed the whole origin of how it all started from the Mongols period, right? So it was pretty interesting. So I saw another, obviously got recommended by YouTube. YouTube algorithm is getting insane, right? How they can just predict something. So yeah, how vodka ruined Russia. I mean, if there is a country that has been associated with anything alcohol, it's Russia, right? Russia, vodka, it's just everybody knows that, right? Second one, if I'm going to think, is Ireland with their alcohol consumption thing, right? So I've seen how the system worked of Russia, throughout the years from that Kraut video, and it kind of makes sense how vodka became so popular, because in that obviously, I mean, people told me in the comments that some information might not be accurate. I don't know, right? So I only know what information was given to me. So from judging from that, it makes sense that how vodka became so popular. Because if the states are the only thing matter, and peasants always gets rejected, and their rights always gets violated, they are always suffering. I mean, you can understand how vodka becomes an escape, right? Whenever suffering and depression is there, some kind of a substance or abuse of substance is going to be there, like vodka. Yeah. The stereotype of the drunk Russian is common and widespread. The Russian alcohol is, however, more than just a stereotype. Downing a bottle of vodka, slurring his word, and making a fool of himself, the Russian with a drinking problem is the result of 4 centuries of a systemic alcohol problem that is by now deeply ingrained within the Russian society. More sad than funny, Russian relationship with vodka is built on a fascinating history of czars, peasants, industry. Okay, so basically what this description is saying, what I think it is, right? I mean, it kind of makes sense. So let's watch it. Even Real Life Lore made a video about this. Isn't the recommended feed? Okay, let's just alcohol problem.
When you search through history books, you will find many anecdotes on the role that alcohol and other addictive substances played in shaping societies throughout human history. The pharaohs of ancient Egypt paid their farm laborers in bread and beer. Greek wine was one of the most prized commodities of the ancient world, so when the Carthaginians sold their low-quality wine abroad, they falsely labeled the amphoras as Greek wine. The British notoriously forced access and control over the 19th century Chinese economy by illegally selling opium to its people.
Yeah.
But no historic relationship between a society and an addictive substance is as fast.
Britain's I'm gonna take poppy from India and just gonna make opium in China. That was that was an interesting video I watched from here. What was the channel? I'm fucking Extra Credits, I think. Yeah, right.
Fascinating, sinister, and barely talked about as the relationship between Russia and vodka. There is nothing special about vodka. It has no taste, no flavor, no smell. It's just ethyl alcohol, simply produced from wheat or rye. And these
vodka has no taste. Really? I mean, okay, first of all, vodka has no taste. Why are people still drinking? I mean, understand the peasants, poor people still suffering, still drinking it. But I see movies and so where somebody asks for a vodka in a bar, if it has no taste, why are you drinking it? I mean, I guess just for the sake you want to numb your feelings, or you're sad or something, you don't care about the taste, is that it?
Simple, not too special facts of vodka is exactly what made it so special. Its simplicity allowed it to be produced and consumed en masse by simple peasants throughout Eastern Europe beginning in the 8th century. Any peasant could make it and any peasant could sell it, until the 1480s. Until then, the lands we know as Russia were a set of small independent principalities and kingdoms, until Ivan III became the ruler of the Duchy of Moscow and by conquest united the principalities under one Russian kingdom, of which he became the Tsar. Ivan established a centralized government with a a centralized autocratic rule controlled by the king. And as he built his state, he noticed the popularity of that cheap, intoxicating spirit amongst his peasants and had an idea. He banned the production and sale of alcohol by peasants and declared the production and sale of alcohol a royal privilege. All alcohol was now the property of the Russian crown and could only be produced by and bought from the Russian crown. This was a guaranteed...
What the fuck? I still can't get this one. I said that in the yesterday's video about Russia's history from this channel. Like, how the fuck people didn't revolt? First of all, Tsar, the king or whatever, right, at the time, had all the powers. Not even nobles had any power, right? Not even aristocrats had any power. It's all the state, basically, the king, the emperor, Tsar, whatever. And now you're gonna ban all the peasants from making vodka, and you're the only one who can make it, right? I mean, whenever you see some kind of a joke happening somewhere, the joke always says like, you take away someone's alcohol and that's the last straw or something like that, right? So when the conditions are shitty, people are suffering, and here comes Ivan. Yeah, I'm gonna take all of your vodka. You can't make it, only I can. I'm surprised how there was not massive revolt there.
Source of revenue for the Russian royal family, a monopoly on a cheap product that everyone wanted and which could be very cheaply produced en masse. Throughout the centuries, the Tsars opened vodka plant after vodka plant, pumping out cheap alcohol while filling their own pockets. A system that was so profitable that when Catherine the Great rewarded lesser nobles for their service, she didn't give them land, but vodka production and selling grants to cash in on this lucrative monopoly.
Yeah.
A system that lasted for almost 428 years. And as much as this may sound like just...
What is the saying? Go give a guy money and, he'll just waste it or something, but give a guy a job, he'll be set for life or something like that. I don't know. I probably, fucked up that whole analogy or saying or whatever that was. But that's what Catherine did. Yeah, I could give you something right now, and that's not going to matter in 50 years. But I'm going to give you a fucking business that you can profit from centuries.
Here, little interesting historic anecdote on a long-gone mercantile economic system, there is far more to it than that. Something sinister, the reverberations of which still echo throughout Russian society to this day. Alcohol is a poison, harmful to the soul and body. Therefore, it is a great sin to drink alcohol and to offer it to others. And it is even a greater sin to produce and sell this poison. This phrase is from Tolstoy. When Tsar Nicholas II had to rescind powers to an elected body in 1905, one of the first things the Russian liberals and social democrats who were newly elected into a position of power wished to do was to combat the massive alcoholism problems of Russia.
Wait a minute. What did Soviets did? Did they ban vodka just because it was kind of monopolized by Tsar for centuries? Like, now vodka becomes, just synonymous to Tsar or a central state king or whatever, because only they can make it, right? Like, vodka is all about the, Tsars and kings, all about the state, and Soviets being Soviets, right? People's Republic or whatever. I think they would have been like, fuck vodka or something like that. I mean, that would have been, did they do that? That would be interesting, man.
First step was to ask the famous and revered novelist to write a warning label to be printed on every single bottle of vodka. The Tsar, who owned the entire alcohol industry, refused. Because the system the Tsars established over the course of 400 years was not only a source of revenue. By controlling the entire market, they also determined the price and consequently kept the population drunk on a constant mass supply of cheap and widely available vodka. A peasant who wastes his money on vodka is too drunk to think of his situation and how he got into it, too drunk to organize any protest against his circumstances, so drunk he beats his kids into being drunks like him, and so drunk he beats his wife into submission. In the end, that peasant is a peasant in service of ensuring the security of the regime that keeps him drunk.
Keep them drunk and keep them poor, and they'll work for us. Man, they were basically slaves at that point. This is ridiculous.
The Tsars of Russia established a profitable system of state-subsidized alcoholism, which not only ensured them personal wealth, but the security of their regime. They were in essence drug dealers, or at least relied on the same addiction-fed market that a drug dealer would rely on. Alcohol addiction is a horrible disease. It increases blood pressure, inflamed and swollen blood vessels, kidney, pancreas and liver failure that leads to an excess of fat cells creating deformed abdomens. But far from just the individual effects, alcohol is also part of a vicious social circle of misery. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to become an addict. Addiction is preconditioned on misery and despair. It appears where there is despair and hopelessness, and perversely increases that hopelessness.
Well, not always, right? I mean, mostly addiction is through something obviously like depression, misery, sure. But sometimes, even if somebody is not depressed, but sometimes somebody just tries something out, your brain likes it, right? I mean, there's a reason why certain addictive things are addictive, because your brain basically like, oh, take it more. You take it once, you take it second time, and before you realize you're addicted to it, right? Mostly it starts from like, okay, something like alcohol is from misery, sure. But there are lots of, different type of drug abuses that not necessarily always, I mean, rich people, right? Rich people's kids and rich people get addicted to drugs. So, yeah.
The alcoholic not only becomes more hopeless and miserable themselves, but will contribute to the misery and hopelessness of those around him. Perplexingly, addiction on a massive social scale creates social strife and misery, while simultaneously robbing those affected by it of the means to do something about it. This is why the drug trade comes with violent social decline and disaffection of communities, because it uses misery as an economic commodity. It is because of this, and largely forgotten today, that the Russian Communist Party was a prohibitionist party that advocated for the banning of liquor. In early Soviet propaganda, you will find this reflected, as well as in old Soviet movies, in which the revolutionaries smash liquor bottles as if they were chains that had constrained them. Leninism was strictly prohibitionist and declared alcohol to be a vice by which the bourgeoisie subjugated and controlled the proletariat. Consequently, after the Bolshevik takeover, the Tsar's vodka plants were all shut down and closed. For a while. When Stalin seized power, he reopened the vodka plants, started filling bottles again, and distributed them cheaply amongst the public. Stalin pretty much rebuilt the old Tsarist system of subsidized alcoholism that the revolutionaries had tried to dismantle. He just renamed it to the People's Vodka.
Of course he did.
In a very cynical move. The Russian people already had a People's Vodka for 400 years. This series of events is commented on by George Orwell in his famous book Animal Farm, an often overlooked scene where the animals in their revolution destroy all the alcohol they found in the house of the farmer Jones, except for Napoleon, who steals himself away with some liquor. And the Tsarist system, which was re-established by Stalin, remained in place throughout the remaining 60 years of Soviet history. Its effects were most strongly felt starting in the 1970s and throughout the 1980s during the Soviet Union's increasing economic decline. In those days there was not much to work for, there was not much to celebrate, there was a lost war still being fought in Afghanistan, and there was not much for the state to sell. But there was always money to be made when socialism fails by selling bottles of cheap vodka to a miserable public. The recent HBO series Chernobyl did an excellent job at hinting to its audience how by the late 1980s Russian society had a deep-seated and systematic alcoholism problem.
Yeah, see, the problem with that is that, Soviet, first of all, started, Lenin, everybody just started like, okay, alcohol is how basically Tsars controlled us, how, kept us as basically slaves, so we have to ban that. But eventually, they start to hit some roadblocks, right? And they realize like, okay, this, our government is not working. Soviets are not working and we need money. So they basically see something that should go against what they stand for, but they still implement it because they think that this is a necessary evil for now. Since we are struggling with money, for temporarily this is fine, right? We'll just make the vodka, even though it goes against everything we stood for in a way, right? But, in order for Soviets to succeed and people to succeed, we have to, step back a bit and do something that doesn't align with us. That's where the slippery slope starts, right? That's where People's Republic eventually becomes, dictatorship, basically. In order to help people, I need to help me first. That's the mentality
The Stolchinaya vodka bottles you see in the series are also somewhat famous, because you couldn't close them anymore once you took the cap off. They were made that way because in production the assumption was that the average Russian, once opening a vodka bottle, would finish it in one sitting, therefore closing the bottle wasn't necessary. By the late 1980s, the alcoholism problem reached such an extent that Gorbachev, in desperation, enacted a prohibition of liquor. This resulted in the mass appearance of illegal vodka plants throughout the country and was therefore abandoned. Today, almost 30 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the problems remain. The system of state-subsidized alcoholism no longer exists. The vodka plants, though, were privatized and are owned by oligarchs who still sell the vodka at cheap prices. No measures were taken by the Russian government to stem the benign systematic alcoholism and excessive alcohol consumption of the Russian public. The ramifications of such are of course felt in crime rates, productivity, and social decline and misery. Russia will eventually not get around having to confront a legacy of 400 years of alcoholism. And this is more than just a history lesson, let alone restricted to Russia. Think of the current opiate crisis in the United States. How the current response to social misery is to dish out pills to help people stomach through their days and lives. How a fully legal dependency on addictive substances was created in the United States at a profit that uses social and individual misery as a market commodity. And more to the point, how it is largely ignored and not a topic of contention, drug-riddled.
So first of all, the opiate crisis. I mean, of course, somewhat misery and, conditions also play with that. But as our society becomes larger and larger, our social structure is also changing. People are becoming, alone more and more, basically. Everybody is not connected anymore because of social media and shit. And everywhere, United States and all the major countries, depression is constantly rising, right? Depression is one of the highest ever. We're not counting one of the, worst economical times, right? That would be the higher. But averagely, the depression is one of the highest one right now. So obviously, when it comes that kind of misery, right? Not financial misery per se. I mean, obviously there is that, but overall social misery, right? Like how, everything is just getting bigger and bigger. Cities are getting bigger and the people are getting separated more and more, even though they are living in cities. They like to basically go to Facebook rather than, basically get together and shit like that. So depression is rising. So substance abuse is also rising. That's just fucked up.
Miserable communities often find themselves within such a state because it is the misery and hopelessness that creates the perfect market conditions for addictive substances, which consequently increase the misery and violence while robbing communities of the ability to rid themselves thereof. The entirety of our understanding of addiction and how it plays into society through the ills it creates is largely flawed and dominated far too much by a judgmental standard that reduces the problem to individuals to be punished rather than social ills in need of solutions. If you're interested in this topic and want to know more, I recommend to you to read Drink, A Cultural History of Alcohol by Ian Gately.
Yep. So there we go. How vodka ruined Russia. Yeah, after watching that authoritarianism video on Russia, it doesn't surprise me how common people start to rely on alcohol as a mean of escape because how their conditions were. But yeah, in modern world, even where places that are thriving, substance abuse is still an issue because of all the social structure is becoming going forward, right? How people are getting loner and loner, I guess. But yeah. Right, well, that was how vodka ruined Russia with the channel Kraut. If you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time.